We prepared for tanks, missiles, and armies, but we weren't ready for baseball bats wrapped in barbed wire or men who treated sleep as optional. The Dren Dominion, for centuries, had reigned as the galaxy's ultimate military force. Their fleets moved with brutal precision, conquering one world after another. When their massive armada arrived in Earth's orbit, they anticipated yet another routine conquest. Humanity, after all, was a young species, still quarreling over borders and barely advancing past internal combustion engines. High General Carax, the invasion commander, predicted victory in weeks, perhaps even days. Initially, their strike was flawless. Dren battle cruisers obliterated military installations, communication hubs, and transportation networks. Waves of drones pacified major cities, capturing key locations with a clinical efficiency that bordered on monotony. Resistance was scattered and inconsequential. Casualties among the Dren forces were minimal. Earth seemed to be falling just as easily as every other planet. But then the unexpected began. It started in North America's forests. Recon teams sent to capture retreating human soldiers disappeared. Another squad tracked faint heat signatures in the underbrush, but never returned. A third team only found silence and a disturbing drone feed showing a primitive pitfall trap lined with sharpened stakes, dripping in blood. The Dren, accustomed to calculated battles, weren't prepared for traps, nor the dirty chaos of war. Carax dismissed the incidents as anomalies. He was wrong. Soon, the reports became increasingly bizarre. A battalion vanished in Australia's deserts after transmitting fragmented messages of sandstorm and ambush before falling silent. In Asia's megacities, guerrilla fighters struck under cover of night, blending into the populace by day. In rural Africa, vehicles were abandoned, drivers missing, and crude explosives left their marks. Humans weren't adhering to traditional warfare, they were hunters and terrifyingly adept ones. It wasn't just their tactics. Humans themselves seemed alien to the Dren. While most conquered species begged for mercy, humans fought with an unhinged fury, laughing in the face of overwhelming odds. They valued survival over their own safety, earning the whispered moniker the Unruly Ones, but that name didn't capture the growing dread among the alien invaders. In frustration, Carax ordered a full-scale purge. Occupation was abandoned. Annihilation was the new goal. Yet for every village razed, resistance only grew stronger. Groups emerged with names like the Wolverines, the Iron Fangs, and the Sons of Liberty. Their insignias were crude, their weapons primitive repurposed tools, fertilizer bombs, and ancient firearms that were often as dangerous to their users as their targets. Still, they worked. The first major Dren defeat came in Moscow. The siege was supposed to be routine. With the city surrounded and outmatched, it should have fallen easily. Instead, the humans set it ablaze. The fire spread uncontrollably, overwhelming Dren containment efforts. As flames engulfed districts, soot-covered human fighters emerged, scavenged alien weapons in hand. They pushed back the Dren, reclaiming the city block by block until the invaders retreated in disarray. Carax was furious. By all logic, the humans should have been losing. They were weaker, disorganized, and technologically inferior. Yet they were winning. During a heated meeting, he slammed his clawed fist on the table, roaring, "These primitives fight like animals." An advisor murmured, "They fight like they have nothing to lose." The comment lingered in the room, haunting Carax. The truth began to dawn on him. The Dren fought for conquest, glory, and expansion. Humans fought for survival and something deeper, something Carax couldn't grasp. Over time, even the Dominion's superior technology began to fail. Human saboteurs used EMP mines to disable advanced drones, mud and patience defeated thermal cloaks, and hackers infiltrated supply drones, rerouting or poisoning critical resources. The Dren were overwhelmed by an enemy that adapted faster than they could react. Then came the final blow, the fall of the flagship VLAN. Orbiting Earth, it was the Dominion's pride, bristling with weaponry and protected by advanced shields. It symbolized their might, but human hackers infiltrated its systems, overriding protocols and sending it crashing into the Atlantic. The resulting tidal wave was visible from space, but the real devastation was to Dren morale. If humans could destroy the Violin, what else were they capable of? In truth, the Dren were defeated long before the flagship fell. Humans had shown them something they'd never encountered: an enemy who turned every disadvantage into an advantage, who fought not just with weapons but with relentless ingenuity and unshakable resolve. For the first time, the galaxy's greatest military power faced a force they couldn't subdue. The humans were not conquerable, they were unstoppable. The raw, unyielding chaos of a species that not only resisted but seemed to thrive on defiance was unlike anything the Dren Dominion had ever faced. Humans didn't just aim to survive, they wanted the Dren to regret ever stepping foot on Earth. Karax stood on the observation deck of his command ship, watching in grim silence as yet another transport exploded in the atmosphere. His claws twitched with restrained fury. He had gravely underestimated these creatures. They weren't just another conquest, they were an entirely different kind of enemy, one that might bring the Dominion to its knees. As he observed the distant flare of another downed cruiser in Earth's atmosphere, his frustration boiled over, and his claws gouged shallow marks into the console. The humans were winning battles they had no logical reason to win. The Dominion's meticulous simulations had never predicted such resistance, much less the possibility of outright defeat. "Commander, we've intercepted another human transmission," reported a subordinate, standing stiffly at attention. "They're boasting about the destruction of the Violin. They called it a warm-up." Karax turned slowly, his amber eyes narrowing into sharp slits. "A warm-up," he echoed icily. The subordinate nodded, visibly uneasy. "Yes, sir. They've broadcast the message across all frequencies. Some of our troops are now refusing to enter their territories. Fear is spreading." Karax's teeth bared in a snarl, his rage barely contained. "Fear is a luxury they cannot afford," he growled. "Increase rotations, reassign them if necessary, but I will not tolerate this insubordination." The subordinate bowed and quickly left, leaving Karax alone with his simmering thoughts. Fear among the disciplined Dren was an ominous sign of collapse, a collapse that, if left unchecked, would spread like a contagion. Determined to reassert control, Karax convened his tactical officers to outline a more aggressive campaign. If the humans wanted chaos, he would drown them in it. Orbital strikes were no longer reserved for strategic military targets. Civilian population centers became the new focus. Cities already under Dominion control were purged as a warning to others. Every corner of Earth would feel the Dominion's wrath. The campaign began with merciless precision. From orbit, plasma bombardments obliterated densely populated regions, reducing entire cities like London, Beijing, and Sao Paulo to glowing ruins beneath ashen skies. Swarms of drones scoured the wilderness for human fighters, while biological agents were deployed to weaken resistance in key areas. But the strategy backfired spectacularly. For every city the Dren destroyed, more fighters rose from the rubble, their hatred burning brighter than ever. Human leaders openly mocked the Dominion in broadcasts, daring them to burn it all. "You'll find us waiting in the ashes," one defiant voice proclaimed, crackling over hacked frequencies. And wait they did. Dren patrols began disappearing with alarming regularity. Forests thought to be secure turned into death traps, riddled with explosives and ambushes. The ruins left by orbital bombardments became mazes of destruction, where humans moved like specters, striking without warning. The Dominion, so reliant on precision and order, floundered in the chaos. Karax's patience wore thin. The humans weren't merely resisting, they were humiliating him. His name, once synonymous with invincibility, was now whispered with doubt among his officers. He needed a decisive victory to reaffirm the Dominion's dominance. An opportunity presented itself. Intelligence located a high-priority human resistance cell operating out of a bunker deep within the Rocky Mountains. Reports suggested this group was orchestrating many of the coordinated strikes against the Dominion. Eliminating them would cripple the resistance. Karax personally took command of the operation, determined to make an example of the insolent humans. At dawn, the assault began. Dren dropships descended through dense clouds, deploying armored troops to secure the perimeter. Karax's elite guard advanced cautiously through the rocky terrain, plasma rifles sweeping the cliffs for any signs of movement. Drones scouted ahead, meticulously scanning for traps. It was the most carefully planned operation since the Dominion's arrival on Earth. But the humans had anticipated this. As the Dren forces approached the bunker, they encountered eerie silence. No resistance, no signs of life. Suspicious but resolute, Karax ordered his troops to breach the outer doors. The moment they did, the mountain roared to life. Mines buried deep within the rock exploded in a calculated sequence, unleashing torrents of debris that buried entire squads alive. Their muffled screams echoed through the chaos. Karax roared at his soldiers to push forward, leading them into the bunker. Inside, the atmosphere was chillingly quiet. Crude graffiti mocking the Dren covered the walls in the humans' enigmatic script. The further Karax ventured, the more apparent it became this wasn't a command center, it was a trap. The first wave of human fighters struck from the shadows, armed with scavenged Dominion weapons. Chaos erupted once again, but this time the humans were no longer prey. They were the hunters, and Karax had unwittingly walked straight into their lair. The humans fought with savage determination, wielding makeshift explosives and crude weapons with a ferocity that threw even Karax's elite guard into chaos. Plasma fire illuminated the rocky terrain as the Dren struggled to regroup, but the humans didn't fight like soldiers, they fought like predators. Every shadow, every corner held an ambush. Their attacks weren't just tactical, they were personal. It was as though their sole purpose was to make the Dren suffer. By the time Karax clawed his way back to the surface, half his forces were dead, and the mountainside swarmed with human fighters. Their war cries echoed in defiance, grating against his nerves. Overhead, a patchwork fleet of human aircraft, cobbled together from Dominion wreckage, descended like scavenging vultures. "Fall back," Karax ordered. His voice strained, regroup at the dropships, but the humans had anticipated this retreat. Escape routes were laden with traps, and the landing zones became slaughterhouses as human rockets targeted the dropships, piercing their hulls one by one. When Karax finally reached the last operational craft, only a handful of his soldiers remained. As the dropship ascended into the ash-filled sky, he looked back at the battlefield. Below, the humans were cheering a unified roar of triumph that resonated like a dagger to his pride. They weren't just defeating the Dominion, they were reveling in their victory. Karax had faced countless adversaries, but never ones like this. The humans weren't merely fighting for survival, they fought for something deeper, something he couldn't understand but feared nonetheless. As the dropship entered orbit, Karax refused to entertain thoughts of surrender. The war wasn't over, not yet, but reports flooding into the command ship painted a grim picture. Resistance forces were mounting coordinated assaults across the globe, targeting the few remaining Dominion strongholds. Supply lines were obliterated, and morale among his troops had plummeted. For the first time in his career, Karax stared into the possibility of defeat. He rejected it outright. "The Dominion has weathered countless wars," he growled. "A single primitive species will not undo centuries of conquest, not while I command this fleet with that." He barked an order. "Regroup all remaining ships. We will raise this planet entirely if we must. Their defiance ends now." There was hesitation among his officers as Karax's words sunk in. His plan involved deploying the fleet's forbidden planet killer devices, superweapons banned even by Dominion law. Their unease was evident, but his piercing glare silenced any objections. The orders were given, and across Earth's orbit, Dominion vessels began priming their most devastating payloads. Then, the alarms blared. Unidentified ships approaching, an officer called out in panic. "There, human." Karax turned sharply to the display. What he saw left him momentarily speechless. The humans had somehow assembled a fleet of their own, a hodgepodge of retrofitted Dominion technology and salvaged spacecraft. What should have been a chaotic, mismatched collection moved with shocking precision, piercing through the Dominion's orbital defenses with calculated strikes. As Karax watched, his jaw tightened. The humans weren't floundering, they were targeting the Dominion's critical systems communication relays, shield generators, even the primed planet killer devices. Every maneuver was methodical, every strike devastating. This wasn't the disorganized resistance he'd encountered on Earth. They had become an army. Deploy interceptors, Karax roared. Crush them before they reached the command ship. Dominion fighters surged into formation, but the humans were prepared. Swarms of crudely retrofitted drones, barely space-worthy but packed with explosives, overwhelmed the interceptors. The humans fought with relentless precision, sacrificing ships to create openings in the Dominion's defenses. Piece by piece, Karax's once unassailable fleet was falling apart. The command ship trembled violently as an explosion rocked its hull. Karax steadied himself against the console. Status report, he demanded. Shields are failing, Commander and officer stammered. The humans. They're boarding us. Karax's eyes narrowed in disbelief. Boarding? Such a tactic was either desperation or madness. Snarling, he drew his plasma blade. Prepare the guard. They will not take this ship. The humans breached the command ship's airlocks, their explosives crude but effective. They poured into the ship, wearing makeshift armor and wielding weapons cobbled together from Dominion tech. Despite their ramshackle appearance, they moved with a brutal efficiency. Karax led his elite guard to intercept them, cutting down the first wave with ease. But for every human he struck down, more seemed to take their place, advancing tirelessly, fearlessly, and with unrelenting ferocity. The battle spilled into the command center, turning it into a chaotic melee of plasma fire and blood. Karax fought with all his might, but the humans were overwhelming. Step by step, he was forced back, his guard falling around him. These humans weren't just soldiers, they were survivors, driven by an indomitable will that Karax couldn't match. As the last of his guard fell, Karax found himself face to face with one of the human leaders. The man was battered, his armor scorched and battered, but his eyes burned with unyielding determination. He held a bloodied blade, its crude edges a testament to human ingenuity. Your reign ends here, the human said, his voice calm and resolute. Karax roared and lunged, his blade a blur, but the human sidestepped deftly, deflecting the attack and driving his own weapon into Karax's side. Staggering, the Dren general dropped to his knees, blood pooling beneath him. His vision blurred as he gazed up at his adversary. You are a primitive species, Karax spat weakly. How did you do this? The human crouched to meet his gaze. His voice was steady as he replied, You underestimated us. You thought we'd break. But all you did was give us a reason to fight. You made us better. Karax tried to speak, but his strength failed him. Darkness crept into the edges of his vision as the human leader turned away, his voice ringing out to his comrades, Take the ship. End this war. And so they did. Across the planet, resistance forces rose in unison, driving the remaining Dominion forces off Earth. The war that had once seemed hopeless was over. Humanity stood victorious not as conquerors but as survivors. They began to rebuild, scattering the remnants of Dominion technology and fortifying their planet against future invasions. They had faced annihilation and emerged stronger not just as a species, but as a force the galaxy would never forget. But victory came with a price. The scars of war stretched across every continent. Cities lay in ruins, fields scorched, and oceans polluted with the wreckage of fallen ships. The humans, though battered, wasted no time in rebuilding. What had once been a fractured collection of nations found unity in survival. Borders faded as a singular focus took hold. Earth could never again be caught unprepared. The remnants of Dominion technology, scattered across the globe, became humanity's greatest asset. Engineers, scientists, and hackers worked tirelessly, deconstructing the alien machines that had once sought to enslave them. What they couldn't use, they destroyed, unwilling to leave any chance of the Dominion reclaiming it. From these efforts emerged advancements that catapulted humanity decades into the future. Energy systems derived from Dominion reactors powered the cities being rebuilt. Medical breakthroughs from alien tech saved millions of lives. Even space travel, once the dream of visionaries, became a reality. Still, the specter of the Dominion lingered. Scouts and drones sent into the void returned with ominous signs of regrouping fleets on the edge of known space. Survivors of the Dominion forces that had fled Earth would not forget their defeat, and neither would humanity. The leaders of the resistance, now unified in their efforts, made a decision that would alter the course of human history. Earth would no longer be the hunted. The construction of humanity's first fleet began in the ruins of their greatest cities. Shipyards rose where once proud towers had stood, their foundations laid with the steel and resolve of a people who refused to kneel. Every ship built carried a name etched in defiance: the Phoenix, Freedom's Call, the Fallen's legacy. These weren't just vessels, they were promises to the galaxy and to the future of Earth. As the fleet grew, so did humanity's reach. They ventured beyond their atmosphere, exploring the remains of Dominion outposts abandoned in their hasty retreat. On the moons of Jupiter, they uncovered caches of weapons and star charts that mapped not just Dominion territory but the locations of countless other worlds, some enslaved, others desolate. For the first time, humanity realized they were not alone in their suffering. Across the galaxy, the Dominion had left a trail of destruction, and Earth's victory was more than just a rebellion, it was a spark. Word of Earth's triumph spread slowly at first, carried by defectors and scattered broadcasts intercepted by distant worlds. To some species, it was a tale too wild to believe, a primitive planet defeating the most powerful empire in the galaxy. To others, it was hope incarnate. The Dominion's iron grip, thought unbreakable, had been shattered. If humans could resist, so could they. But the Dominion wasn't idle. Reports came from the fringes of space of new fleets assembling, larger and deadlier than before. Survivors from Earth's invasion brought warnings of humanity's resourcefulness, their ability to turn even the smallest advantage into a weapon. Dominion strategists debated endlessly: was humanity an anomaly, or the beginning of a greater threat? The answer, they feared, lay not just in Earth's victory but in what humanity was becoming. On Earth, leaders debated their next move. Some argued for consolidation, fortifying the planet against the inevitable counterattack. Others insisted on taking the fight to the Dominion before they could strike again. The decision was not an easy one, but as the first fleet launched into the void, humanity made its intentions clear. They would not wait for war to come to them. The fleet's maiden voyage was both a mission of exploration and a test of resolve. It sought not only to scout Dominion territory but to find allies among the stars. The humans had no illusions about their odds. The Dominion, even fractured, was vast. But Earth had learned something: in its darkest hour, survival wasn't enough. To secure their future, they needed to build alliances, to unite those who had suffered under the Dominion's rule. Their first contact was tentative. The species they encountered, the Valari, were masters of stealth and survival, having evaded Dominion rule for centuries through sheer cunning. When the humans arrived, the Valari were skeptical, a fledgling species with no history among the stars. But as the humans shared their story, their battle for Earth, their defiance, their scars, the skepticism gave way to respect. The Valari, inspired by humanity's resilience, joined them, offering their expertise in guerrilla warfare and cloaking technology. As humanity expanded outward, their resolve only deepened. Every step forward brought new challenges, new allies, and new enemies. The Dominion, watching from its core worlds, began to understand the depth of their mistake. Earth wasn't just a rebellious world, it was a catalyst. And while humanity's journey was just beginning, the galaxy had already learned one unshakable truth: the people of Earth would not go quietly into the night. They would rise, adapt, and endure, not just for themselves, but for every world yearning to be free.